Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wait just a quick minute here to let other folks join in, and then we'll get started promptly at 11:31. Great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are thrilled to have our friends with the National Criminal Justice Association with us today for this morning's webinar on understanding the CESF program, how prosecutors can apply for federal funding. My name is Frank Russo. I'm the Director of Government and Legislative Affairs at the National District Attorneys Association. It's my pleasure to be joining you all this morning. Before we dive into our featured speaker, I want to go over some of the ground rules. First, just a bit of housekeeping. All attendees' microphones have been muted. If you would like to submit a question, please use the questions window. Following about a 15-minute presentation, our speaker will be taking time to answer each of your questions. If you experience any technical issues, please try to log out and come back in, or close out any extra programs and browser windows. These tend to eat up bandwidth and cause issues. If you're still having problems, you can contact the GoToWebinar help desk. As many of you know, NDAA is offering several virtual learning opportunities in order to provide training opportunities as we deal with the ongoing pandemic. You can visit NDAA.org for additional course offerings. And of course, if you have any questions or feedback, please send an email to training@ndaajustice.org. With that, I'm excited to turn to our speaker and our topic for today. As we have discussed with many district attorneys across the country, we recognize there is a need for federal funding to support you all as you work through this difficult and ongoing pandemic and crisis. As you may have known, Congress, through the CARES Act, passed Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding, or CESF funding. And we thought it would be important to hear about how you can apply for this funding and how you can work with your state administering agency to ensure that this funding is received in your office and for the folks that you work with. So to that end, we have an exciting speaker this morning who can speak to a lot of this and really is going to explain the program and how it can impact and improve and help each of your offices across the country. So I'm excited to introduce Chris Asplin. Chris Asplin is the Executive Director of the National Criminal Justice Association. He is a former prosecutor and a national and international expert on the use of DNA technologies. Previously, he served as a director of the DNA Legal Assistance Unit for the American Prosecutors Research Institute and the National District Attorneys Association. As an assistant United States attorney and as the executive director of the National Commission on the Future of DNA Evidence for the U.S. Department of Justice. In private practice, Asplin has advocated for policy and legislative initiatives integrating DNA technology, including post-conviction DNA, into criminal justice systems around the world. He has worked with governments and law enforcement agencies in 35 countries to implement DNA technology to maximize its ability to identify and convict the guilty while protecting the innocent. A noted national and international speaker, he has testified before the U.S. Congress, the South African and Philippine parliaments, and has appeared on and written for numerous news outlets. He also serves as a consultant to the U.S. Department of State and the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism on the prosecution of nuclear terrorism crimes. Most importantly, Chris and the National Criminal Justice Association are a great partner to NDAA in our federal work and in our policy work. So it's my honor to turn it over to Chris, and we're excited to hear about his presentation and then take questions from you all. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. And one thing that I would add is that I am like every other former prosecutor, former assistant district attorney, or former assistant U.S. attorney, that no matter what I have done since that time, as I look back at my career, my favorite job was always as a prosecutor in the courtroom. So it's nice to be with you all today. We appreciate it. Here at NCJA, we hope that all of you listening in today, that you and your families and your colleagues are all safe and well during this difficult time. And Frank, back at you in terms of how much we appreciate and enjoy the relationship that NCJA has with NDAA. We appreciate it, and we're proud to be in this battle with you folks. So, as Frank said, what we're going to talk about today is the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program. The purpose of the webinar is to walk through the new Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program, which is referred to as the CESF. And we will explain the purpose of the new program and the process grantees will use to direct funding to needs in their communities related to the coronavirus. Now, the CARES Act was signed into law on March 27th of 2020. President Trump signed it into law, and it was, as you are, I'm sure, familiar, a $2 trillion COVID-19 stimulus package. Now, the package overall was meant to stabilize the national economy, provide immediate resources to most Americans, extend unemployment insurance, provide relief for industries particularly impacted by social distancing, provide blanket support to states and local governments, and to provide additional funding for grant programs and federally funded services intended to help communities respond to the pandemic. Now, the purpose of the CESF, the CARES Act provided $850 million through the Burn Jag Assistance Grant Program formula. And this is important. It is to, quote, prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus domestically and internationally. And that's really important, as those 3 points, the prevention, preparation, and responding to coronavirus, that's the phrase that really guides the utilization of the funding moving forward. So everything has to be connected to those 3 attributes. Now, Congress chose the Burn Jag formula as the best mechanism for getting new funding out to the states and localities as quickly as possible, and to respond to needs from across the justice system. Again, the new funding is called the CESF program. The CESF formula and distribution will flow through the Burn Jag Assistance Program. Burn Jag is distributed by the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, according to a formula based on population and crime rate. Under the CARES Act, every state and locality that received a Burn Jag award in FY19 is eligible to receive an award under CESF. Now, once each state's award is calculated, the funding flows in 2 streams. 60% of the state as a formula block grant, based again on population and crime rate, and then 40% to certain localities based on share of crime rate in the state. Now, we posted the allocations for each state, territory, and locality on our website. Now, let's talk about state allowable grantees. The state formula grant goes to every state, territory, and the District of Columbia. That funding is administered by each state and territory. And you can see a directory of the SAAs on the NCJA website. Now, every city and state in the country is eligible for either a direct award from the DOJ, Bureau of Justice Assistance, or BJA under CESF, or as a sub-grant from their SAA. Now, let me spend a little more time on this point because it can be a little confusing, and it's important. in creating the CESF program, Congress authorized the funding to go through the BURN-JAG program based on federal fiscal year 2019 awards. So that means that every city or county that received a BURN-JAG award directly from BJA in FY19 will be eligible to receive a CESF award under the grant. And the local government then decides how to invest those funds. So again, you can see on the slide there that, and we'll send this out, that you can identify the local direct allocations by state. And one important difference between the annual BURN-JAG program is that BJA is making separate awards to cities and counties under CESF. In BURN-JAG, those are unified applications. So those applications are now open through the end of May. BJA will receive applications on a rolling basis and have committed to making the awards very quickly. And I can say that we really have seen that in practice, that as we've spoken to our SAAs and to other awardees, that BJA really is reacting very, very quickly to the applications. Now, again, we have those direct award allocations on our website. There is, however, no centralized national directory for these local grantees, but it is the local government authority, in other words, the county board, the city manager, or the mayor's office. And while there are nearly 2,000 local awards, those are the only CESF grants being awarded directly from the federal agency, that's BJA, to the local governments. Now, in addition, whether or not a local government is receiving a direct award, they may apply to their SAA for a grant. Now, each state's process is going to differ slightly, and SAAs may post publicly the process they will use to accept applications and award grants. This is going to be a very jurisdictionally specific proposition. Now, additionally, nonprofit service providers, and in limited cases, for-profit companies, may apply to the state or the local government CESF grantee for a grant. Now, the point to make here, though, for you folks on the call is that local government entity then has the authority and flexibility to decide how to invest these funds within the broad allowable uses of the CESF program. Now, they can direct it to the sheriff's office, the jail, the prosecutor, for community-based service, for all of those. It's up to them, so you need to make your voice heard there. Now, Congress clearly intended the use of these funds to be available for the broadest range of needs. The statute reads simply, $850 million to remain available until expended, again, to those 3 points, to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus domestically or internationally. Now, the grant solicitation from BJA describes the permissible uses. Funds awarded under CESF program must be utilized to, as I said, prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. Now, allowable projects and purchases include, but are not limited to, overtime, equipment, including law enforcement and medical personnel protective equipment, hiring, supplies such as gloves, masks, sanitizers, training, travel expenses, particularly related to the distribution of resources to the most impacted areas, and addressing the medical needs of inmates in state, local, and tribal prisons, jails, and detention centers. Now, we conclude from this that the CESF program is bringing together the flexibility of BURN-JAG with a direct nexus to the coronavirus, and with an expansion outside the traditional boundaries of the DOJ grant to address, for instance, COVID-19 related medical testing for costs, medical testing costs for people in detention. Now, the application timing and process. As I discussed above, there are 3 ways to receive funding under CESF. First, Each state administering agency will receive its award by formula no later than mid-June, but quite frankly, most of them already have applied and have already received their funding. Second, each local agency recipient that is eligible for a direct award under BJA's formula will receive its award by formula also no later than mid-June. Third, local governments, nonprofit service providers, and other state agencies may be able to apply for an award from their SAA. Now, again, that's where timing and process are going to be very state specific. Now, some SAAs may be able to set aside funds to reimburse for personal protective equipment and similar expenditures. Many also have a competitive application process to consider needs from across the state and across the justice system. According to BJA's solicitation, funding is made available for 24 months. This will allow grantees to quickly fund immediate needs, as well as, and importantly, to think about the longer term implications of the coronavirus on state and local justice systems. Let me take a second here and acknowledge that we understand that while initially the coronavirus is having such a deep and hard impact on our first responders, that the collateral consequences of this, when courthouses begin to open up even broader than they are right now, that there are going to be significant needs out there, and thus the 24-month term is important, and the thought process thinking long term for the resources that will be necessary to essentially catch up not only on cases and situations, but to catch up in a completely different dynamic is going to be really important for this money. So some examples of potential funding. One primary purpose of the funding is personal protective equipment and similar needs for most responders and other justice system workers to protect themselves and the people they serve from getting or spreading the virus. Now, this would be such things as gloves and masks for law enforcement officers, jail and prison personnel, prosecutors, and defense attorneys. Because of the expanded uses specifically allowable in the solicitation, this could also be the immediate medical needs of people in the justice system, such as the purpose and processing of diagnostic tests for personnel and inmates, provision of medications, and costs associated with social distancing in congregant living situations, whether that is a jail or a halfway house. Other needs are already becoming clear. For instance, courts have a need for the technology that can allow them to carry on some operations. The CESF funds can be used to quickly purchase and the equipment needed to conduct video arraignments. Also, drug and other specialty courts cannot refer to treatment that cannot operate under social distancing rules. Likewise, with arrests dropping precipitously, some jurisdictions might want to test or scale up existing jail diversion and pretrial citation and release strategies. Many communities are making the decision to release individuals from prison and jail to reduce the chance of contagion. Now, this decision comes with many consequent decisions, such as how to connect them to medical care if needed, how to provide supervision during social distancing, referral to housing and family support, etc. All of these challenges can be funded through CESF funds, as they would be using regular annual burn-jag funding. The supervision through smartphone technology applications are cost-effective and can be deployed quickly. Now, finally, some, if not most of these needs are immediate in communities in the middle of the coronavirus crisis. Some communities may not face these decisions, as I said, for a few months, or if the virus occurs next year. Also, states and localities need to prepare for the likelihood that their budgets will be severely strained even after the virus has been contained. I am sure that's not a point that everyone on this call hasn't already considered. Some investments made using CESF program funds now can not only address the immediate needs in the justice system, but will at the same time prepare for leaner times ahead. Now, burn-jag and SAAs. Because the CESF program is run through the burn-jag formula, it might be useful to provide some context about the BURN-JAG program, its flexibility, and the breadth of investments made by the SAAs. BURN-JAG is the cornerstone federal crime fighting program because of its breadth and flexibility, allowing communities to focus on the most pressing issues. SAAs are guided by the statewide strategic plan that they develop to guide that funding. There is a focus on innovation and scaling promising practices, and BURN-JAG funding is available to use to fill gaps and leverage other resources. Again, that's really why the BURN-JAG formula and the BURN-JAG administrators were really selected to integrate this $850 million into the system to help fight to help combat this problem. So this slide shows the allowable purpose areas under statute and shows that BURN-JAG funds can be invested across the entire system. And this slide illustrates in pie chart form how those investments do, in fact, span the justice system. And this slide shows the role of the state administering agency and links you to places on our website where we have a great deal of information about BURN-JAG. So thank you for your time. Please visit our website at ncja.org for more information on SAAs, the CESF program, and the BURN-JAG program. We're continually updating it with resources and information about the coronavirus response that we hope will be helpful to you. My contact is there on the screen. And at this point in time, let me open it up and ask Frank or anyone else if we have any questions that, that folks would like answered.
Thank you, Chris. We do have a couple of questions. First, will the slides be available after the presentation? The answer is yes. I can answer that one. We will have the slides available for you. And then the National Criminal Justice Association also has a similar version of this webinar that is posted on their website under their COVID-19 resources page. We have a substantive question for you, Chris. So I'll go ahead and read that off and then let you answer. During the ongoing pandemic, many district attorneys have been forced to furlough or lay off staff as state and local budgets are slashed. Would staffing needs fall under an allowable purpose area for CESF funding? Is this something that is worth exploring as we face tighter budgets in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Unfortunately, the answer is really no in this context. The funds cannot be used to essentially make up for your budget shortfalls and difficulties, right? Now, it can be used, again, to provide prosecutors that are necessary because of COVID, or other aspects of it, or technology used to maximize the time that your prosecutors are spending and experiences that they're having to have in terms of bail hearings or anything else like that. But it cannot fulfill that budgetary shortfall. And we actually asked BJA about this. We actually approached it in the context of whether or not it would be considered supplanting. And their response was, no, it's actually not. That's not the problem as much as it's just not an allowable use.
Great, thank you, Chris. We have a couple more questions. Can large counties ask for more money if need be? Well,
so in terms of going to their SAAs for additional funding for particular programs, they can certainly do that. In terms of as direct awardees, I don't believe that there is an ability to go back and ask for more than what has already been calculated in the formula. It's the nature of the formula that controls how much the counties are getting. But again, whether or not there are particular needs that the county can then go to the SAA for, that's a different issue.
Great, thank you. We've got a few more questions that are rolling in now. Department of Treasury has yet to define direct response to COVID-19. Do you know if temporary hiring of prosecutors to address backlogs will fall under this definition?
That's a good question. they can probably do that. Yes. Again, the issue is, can you connect the backlog to the coronavirus situation? And as such, that would be an allowable expense. But the key is justifying it by nature of having connected to the coronavirus.
Great. Our next question is, are items such as laptops to enable working from home during the pandemic allowable under the grant?
Yes.
Great. Next question. If my county is not listed on the local allocations list of the BJA website under my particular state, is my county not eligible to apply for these CESF funds?
Correct. But to be clear, that's applying to BJA for it. That does not mean that the county cannot apply to the SAA. So that's when that lack of being eligible would then mean simply go to your SAA and see what the options are there.
I think that's helpful for our folks to know, and that relationship needs to, either that relationship needs to exist, or they need to continue to build upon it or create it to make sure that they're eligible for those funding, or that they can receive those fundings.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
And just to be clear, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly if you would like some assistance in connecting with your SAA or understanding more about it. We're more than happy to kind of talk you through that process.
Great, thank you. Our second to last question here, can a municipality apply directly to BJA if they were not a direct burn grant, or must they go through the state SAA? That's very similar to the question we just asked.
Right, exactly, it's the same. They're gonna have to go to the SAA.
Correct. Are technology costs to convert in-person trainings to virtual trainings allowable?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Looks like we are almost to our last question here, folks, and we want to be conscious of the time. So we will ask, do you anticipate any change or extension in the deadlines for applications? If not, would it help to work with our state and local governments to ensure that they are applying for these funds? Should we also work with our SAAs on this?
So absolutely, yes. We'd love to encourage you to work with your local agencies. We are, quite frankly, kind of concerned that entities that may be eligible to apply are not applying. And so anything that you can do to ask that question and then pursue that, again, we're happy to be helpful to you with. So we do want to do that. We know that direct awardees that they are extending probably by a week or two, right? In terms of the internal applications to your SAAs, that's going to be, again, a jurisdictionally specific proposition in terms of what the SAA schedule is. But whether or not you can apply to BJA itself and whether or not your locality can is definitely a question to ask, and we would encourage you to do so to make sure that everyone who is eligible is in fact applying.
Great, and I think we have a great final question here, and it's a little bit of a long one. Does the application have to be through a county? We are a DA's office that is made up of 4 counties and operates independently. We receive our own federal grants, and we have our own accounting staff and audit independent of our counties.
So in terms of applying to the SAA's office, no, I don't think you would need to apply through the county. You can apply as a subrecipient. You can apply to the SAA directly, or as one, or as all the jurisdictions together.
Fantastic. Well, seeing no more questions, Chris, I will leave you with the last word, and we'll give folks about a minute back here. But again, thank you all for joining. And Chris, is there any final comments or words you'd like to throw in before we break for the day?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to ask you to realize that we will be sending you a survey for this presentation, which is necessary as part of our federal grant. So I'm going to ask you to please fill that out for us, an evaluation. But much more importantly, I just want to say that, one thing we found as a society in this coronavirus pandemic is that there are a lot of vulnerable communities out there. The elderly, our law enforcement is vulnerable right now, but victims and the accused are also particularly vulnerable right now. And the extent to which the work that you do is being impacted by that is something that we're very sensitive to. And as I started off saying, we're really very proud to be working with you at NDAA to help those vulnerable communities. We all know, all of us prosecutors and former prosecutors know that the victimization that's going on right now, whether it be domestic violence or child abuse, we know what the situation is and that the numbers are worse than what we're seeing because of reporting difficulties, given the fact that everyone is stuck inside. And again, we're here to help. Anything we can do to assist in encouraging you to apply, in assisting you in applying, we really want to do that because we're all in this together and we're proud to be so. So with that, everybody have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Great, thank you, Chris. And again, we want to echo that thanks and appreciation for NCJA and you for always being a good partner to NDAA, and we're thrilled to have this opportunity to give this information to our members. So just again, as a reminder, if you had questions, I think we did answer all of them, but please, you are encouraged to reach out to NCJA about your questions if you feel like you have some further follow-ups. And as a reminder, NDAA will be sending out an email with the survey as well as the slides, and we ask that you download those slides to review them and make sure that you fill out that survey so our partners are eligible under the grant program that they need. So again, we appreciate your taking the time and the opportunity for you all to join us. We're thankful to our partners at NCJA, and we hope you have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, folks.